Demand fast results, and they'll deliver. My mum, for lack of a better term, is a mega Karen. She frequently criticizes me for not being proactive enough and for not standing up for myself. The following story is one that she reminds me of to reiterate her point, but unbeknownst to her, it has the exact opposite effect. The scene was in the early 90s, and I was in college living with my pothead of a sister. At the time, my parents were covering our rent and giving us each a $250 monthly allowance for utilities and food. The only stipulation was that I had to effectively spy on my sister and make sure that she refrained from alcohol and drug use. You may ask why they couldn't trust a grown woman to manage her own life. The reason was that while I was in the military, my sister had gotten plastered and handed her car keys to a fellow partier, who then totaled her car. When my service was done, I agreed to move in with my sister, thinking that she would have learned prudence the hard way and that my only role would be to reassure my mum that everything was going okay so that my sister would be freed from her constant and overbearing harassment. Sadly, this was not to be. My sister had not mellowed out in the least. If anything, she evolved into a wakened baker. She blew her entire monthly allowance on drugs and alcohol. Her shenanigans included buying a QP bag with her friend with the intent of selling most of it, only to smoke it all. She also laundered money by convincing her friends to refill their gas tanks on her credit card in exchange for cash. The best part? My parents bailed her out when her card was maxed because she staged a robbery and claimed that her debit card had been stolen and her bank account cleaned out. That summer, my parents took the family on a Mediterranean cruise, and my mum found a bag of weed in her luggage on the ship. This really caused my parents to flip out because drug offenses in Istanbul are no joke, and it's not far-fetched to think that our entire family could have been implicated in her nonsense. The following school year, in addition to having to live with me, my sister was also required to undergo surprise drug tests. One spring break, she went off to Las Vegas for the weekend with her friend, and when they got back, my mum sprang a drug test on her. My sister was flipping out because she knew for a fact that she was going to fail. She told me that she had been completely baked the entire time she was in Vegas. So there I was, preparing to falsely deny any knowledge of wrongdoing on my sister's part, when my mother called in a fury, but not for reasons that one might think. Apparently the lab had suffered an equipment failure, and they told her that they wouldn't be able to test the sample for a week. This was absolutely not acceptable to my mum, so she ranted and raved in her usual manner until they agreed to have the results back to her ASAP. The next day she smugly called me back to inform me that the results had come back negative. This wasn't a huge surprise to me. After all, if you test a positive sample on broken equipment, of course you'll get a negative result. That's how my sister got a temporary reprieve from her impending eviction. Every once in a while my mum still holds this event up as proof that demanding people get results. Unbeknownst to her, it's just a reminder to me that if I act like a Karen I should expect to be cheated.